He works 3 jobs. He slept on an open trailer with a makeshift tent with a buddy heater for 2 nights there, or 2, maybe 3 nights. It was well into the 20s or lower every night we were there. But just because he wanted to race, period.
Yeah. This is Faith Family Cars Podcast. I'm Jerry.
I'm Zach.
Hit the key.
For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. That was Romans 6:23.
Hey guys, welcome back to Faith Family Cars Podcast. And Jacob Freeman with Ship Points. We are happy to have you with us today.
Hey man, I appreciate you guys having me on here. I'm been really looking forward to it this week.
Yeah, we planned this a while back, hadn't we? So
yeah, well, you mentioned it to me the very first time at PRI, so that was back at the beginning of December. So I've been I was waiting for the email, and then all of a sudden it popped in. So I was, like I said, I was excited to get it. And this is actually the first podcast that I've been on, like as a guest.
Okay,
so
cool.
I'm really excited about it.
That's awesome. So at PRI ended up getting 3 people, get set up for interviews. So it was a little bit getting the emails out because I was scheduling also other people that I had been in contact with too. So in January, it's just like I started sending emails to all kinds of people that are going to be upcoming guests. And so I was playing with dates and trying to figure out when we were going to get different ones on. So yeah, it took a little bit, but I finally got it out to you.
Yeah, no rush at all. Like I said, PRI was so much fun. I enjoyed so much meeting you guys, meeting Eddie and Mark. Eddie with Brick Rod, who I know has been on, and Mark with Built Should Have Bought, who's been on also. Yeah. So I have to follow in their footsteps. I wish you guys had called me first. Everybody set the bar too high.
I just like several others, I found out about you through Eddie. So yeah,
Eddie seems to know a lot of people.
Yeah, and I found out about Eddie through Mark. So it's just kind of
actually when we went to go interview Mark, we met Eddie that day.
Yes,
and that we also met Matt that day as well.
Matt Martin.
Yeah. So we meet a lot of guests through Mark, and then we meet other guests, people that Mark introduces us to.
But it's been awesome. It's been an awesome ride so far. I mean, we're by the time your episode airs, we'll be in the 30s. So episode numbers. So
man, isn't it amazing how fast the numbers come?
Oh yeah,
you're like just churning stuff out, and you're doing stuff, and you're like, holy crap, we did 30 of these already.
Yeah, and you're like, where did it? It's went by fast. And then sometimes I have to sit and remind myself that we've only been doing this for 5 months.
That's wild. That's awesome. Yeah, you guys have been putting in the work.
Yeah. So, and we're just trying to do God's will. And so we're putting in the work to spread his name and to get cool guests on like you to talk about their cars and give their stories. So,
sounds great. Like I said, I don't know if cool is my definition. I don't think if you look it up, that my face is going to be there in the dictionary, but I appreciate it either way.
I'll say, I think you do have probably the coolest logo out of anybody. So far.
And why is that?
Lenko, I've even got it on the shirt.
Lenko, man.
It's awesome.
I actually just found out about the Lenko probably about a year ago. I don't know if you watch Cletus McFarlane, but he put it in a Godzilla box, right? Yeah. And so I was like, I didn't know what that was. And I saw the transmission. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's sweet. They're super sweet. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys want me to get into it a little of the background of the Lenko, the Shift Points logo a little. It's something. So I came up with our very first logo. It was Shift Points. I had just kind of done it like with clip art, basically, just kind of because, what I was doing. And so Shift Points itself, the channel, the idea of it is about 5 to 7 years old. So I had this idea and even named it and everything and just never did anything with it because I was working and I wasn't living here near Dad at that time. And so I had this idea for this channel because I was like, man, we're doing some interesting stuff and we're working on some interesting cars and stuff like that. Like we need to document it. At the very minimum, we need to document it for ourselves, right? So that we can kind of remember what all we did and what as we go forward. And so anyway, so I come up with our very first logo, and then Dad had always this idea. We have a Lenco that we're putting in our 55 race car. It's a full blown tube chassis car, full blown race car. The plan is for this thing to run 4s in the 8th mile. So that's our goal for this car. So that's it. All of my stuff with it. It has this hashtag for Quest for the 4s. So that's what we've been working on. That's what he's wanted to do for 30 years now. And so we're putting that in it. And he's always had this idea of having a bow tie. A Chevy. I know you guys are Ford guys, so bear with me.
Sorry.
So he's had this idea for a bow tie that had like the Lenco markings on it, and then the shifters on the back of it, on the back of it. And so, and then having that as like a logo. Well, then I kind of stole his idea a little, and I was like, what if we put our name on and kind of emboss it into a Lenco transmission, and then that'll be kind of our, that'll kind of be everything to do with the channel, because at the end of the day, the whole reason that I wanted to start this channel was to get this car back to the racetrack.
Yeah,
so we've worked on a lot of other stuff, since then, but yeah, so that was the whole point so that's where the Lenco came from.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the first things when I told Zach we were having you on, he said, man, I love their logo.
Yeah. Well,
and big shout out to Nick Trueblood. I'll give it to him. So Nick, if you guys haven't followed him on anything, Facebook, Instagram, on both of those, he designed that logo. So I just like word vomited, just give him everything I had in mind, and then he took it and actually put it on paper. It's sick Nick Trueblood, and he's a cool guy.
Yeah,
cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm big into the race cars and stuff. So your content's like right up my alley with the 55.
Cool. Awesome. So at least, so even though it's a Chevrolet, I've got you hooked with the 55, and then I've got Galaxy. So I've got both. I've got both.
So we're Ford guys through and through for sure. But I like anything that's a race car. Like
that's me.
Anything on slicks and skinnies or a radial or anything like that. I mean, it could be bone stock, and I still think it looks cool because it's got the tire package on it,
Yeah.
But I don't know. We're big Ford guys, but we can definitely appreciate any other brand for the most part.
Oh yeah, we appreciate a lot of other stuff, but I think the kind of going joke is like in the group of people we've met and been hanging around with are mostly all Chevy guys, and so we're the only Ford guys
at some point.
Oh yeah.
No, ain't gonna happen. I've got a buddy who's been trying to get me to LS swap my Mustang for the longest time because he knows I want to race it. And him and his dad, they race a 1500 horsepower LS Fox body Mustang.
Gotcha.
And it's a bad car. It really is. But he's like, oh, you should just put an LS in it because my car's been down for almost a year at this point. So he's like, just put an LS in it. Just put an LS in it. I'm like, no. He's like, wow, you'll do it one day. I was like, I don't know. My whole circle around me is telling me to put an LS in it, but it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
It ain't ever gonna happen.
Fair enough.
Well, is the 55 going to be a gasser?
No. This car will never be a gasser. So, there's people in our circle. You can see them right back there.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably love to see that as a gasser. But if we ever build a gasser, which maybe one day we might be able to swing something like that, it'll be something else completely. Now, this car is too full blown, more modern race car, if you will. It's kind of he modeled it more. He modeled it a lot. He's pulled a lot of ideas for the car after looking at pro stock cars at Bristol. So we only live about an hour and a half away from Bristol Dragway, and we went from the time that I could basically walk. He was going before, but by the time I could walk, basically, I was going with him every year to the big NHRA national event over there. And so he was pulling ideas on how to improve the chassis and stuff while he was over there looking at those cars. So it's a little bit closer to like top sportsman style, pro stocky style, if you will. So,
cool.
Especially with Lenco.
Yeah.
Sticking with the drag racing talk, I'm not a big. I've never been a big fan of gassers. Okay.
I love it,
but hold on.
love them. I'm gonna put that out there.
He loves them, and he has asked me why I don't like them. But I guess I just don't like the way the front end's set up. Okay, I just
Yep. I
don't care for that.
understand.
But I've been watching a lot of content that you've put out and over the last several months when I started following you. And the more I watch some of the little video clips that you put out of these gassers, the more I'm like, man, those are actually pretty cool running down the track. They look pretty wild.
The Southeast Gassers, and I'll plug them here as well because I've been very fortunate. Their race director is Randy Edmonds, and him and I, we do after each one of their events, we come in here and we do a podcast, kind of a race talk about each race, who won, kind of behind the scenes stuff, I would say. And that's what I really enjoy about it, is it's something that you probably wouldn't see on a video on YouTube or things like that, because it's Randy and he sees things from a different perspective, being the race director. And so Southeast Grassers have been really good to me and let me be a part of it, doing that podcast. But I'll be honest, and Randy might kill me for saying this, but I wasn't a huge Gasser fan either. I didn't get it. I didn't get it because I was so focused around Dad's car and it being more like Top Sportsman, Pro Stock. So I'm like, okay, well, we've kind of advanced past this, right? Like we've well past this, but that's the thing. Like, that's it. Yeah, we have advanced past this, but hey, look, like, don't forget that what we used to do. And that is, if there was something that you could hang your hat on a Gasser event, they are the strictest Gasser series, period. Like, there's no one else that has more strict rules. It has to be pre-1967 done. There's no ways around that. Those cars, every one of them have to be pre-1967, and they have a ton of very detailed rules. What tack you can run. You can only run certain tacks because there was only certain tacks available pre-67. There's certain types of shifters that you can run, like the actual shifter handles. It has to be a certain style. So they have allowed improvements in safety, and they've allowed the improvements in the kind of drivetrain and stuff. So we're not running old Muncies anymore, because if you were trying to put the horsepower that these guys are putting through them, because an A-gas car is pumping close to 1,000 horsepower through it, and you put that through a Muncie and you're going to scatter its guts on the track every time. So they've allowed G-Force to come on, and we're blessed to have G-Force come on and sponsor that podcast for us this year. But allow them to kind of come in, and it's a period correct, if you will, but it's a much stronger deal. And so you guys got to come to one of the events, and if you want to, let's line it up and we'll go, because you just kind of get the shtick, which is just, it is pre-67, and these cars aren't what you see every day. And then you see a 55 Chevy. Leslie has the record right now, bust off a 518 in the 8th mile. Car, I mean, like, and you're like, whoa, like, they don't even like the scoreboards. Like, that's another thing. They don't like the scoreboards because there weren't scoreboards pre-67. So like, the announcer has to tell you. So like, there's this extra element that you have to kind of like listen to the announcer and stuff like that to give you times. But these cars are bad. I mean, Gene Thornton was a bad bullet, and they run it through some nice stuff.
Well, I think that you just made it even better for me, because I think what I've been kind of liking about some of the stuff I've been seeing from you is it's all very nostalgic. I mean, it's when you're watching some of those clips, it's like, man, this is all like back in the 60s. This looks like you're back in the 60s again.
And it's funny, if you look at the comments, how many people actually think that it's old footage. And so those clips that you've seen like that is my buddy Chris. Chris is Frank Steen's Garage. If you look him up, he's the one who shoots and edits, and he lets me collaborate with him on those, and I appreciate him doing that. But he does some awesome work, man. And like you said, it's amazing how many people, I mean, they've got the backup girls dressed in the 60s attire and the dresses, and it's usually their wives or a daughter or whatever that's helping them. And it's very, very family oriented there. Very, like, the whole community. Once you went, like, the first few times I went, it was just like they had known me forever, and I had just met them, and they just welcome me in. How are you? And just talk to you just like they've known you forever.
That's pretty awesome.
I like the period correct racing. I've seen it outside of Gassers too. Like, there's a guy I follow that he lives in California, and they had, like, I'm guessing it was like a 70s kind of night, and like everybody had old school 70s inspired race cars out there, and it was like, I feel like these days, the way drag racing has went, people get lost in all the modern stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
like for me, okay, I'm gonna use myself as an example. I want to drag race. I've wanted to race in some way, shape, or form since I was a very young child, and I want to drag race. I'm trying to build a race car, but it's like in this day and age, there is no way I can afford to build a race car. And it's like, I feel like you look at these period correct style racing, which I know that you said that the guy in the thing that you do with the Southeast Gassers, he ran like a 518, which that's incredibly fast. But there are other groups that have, slower cars for people that are getting into drag racing, and I feel like you look at like the small tire, which is like the biggest thing. That's what everybody who's watching, the small tire prep and small tire no prep. I mean, those cars are running. I mean, you got cars running like 450s, 460s on the street, and it's like
Brett LaSala,
yeah, the guy in the Mustang, yep,
like 212 miles an hour on a radial tire in sick week this week. I mean,
yeah, I know. I've been watching him.
At that point, he run like the second fastest pass of the week on a radial tire. And he's racing. It blows my mind. I agree with you completely.
It's like guys like me who's trying to get into it. There's no way I'm competing with that guy ever in the entirety of my life will I be able to afford to compete with that guy.
You don't know. You never know.
What I'll say about that, because I know what you are. It is, and honestly, drag racing in the past 10 years especially has just really exploded. The technology and the money and the things like that have went into it. It's spiked. But the one thing that I look at is this week, Tom Bailey had his car there. One of the cars on the property, Pro Mod car Camaro. He breaks it. Cletus is doing this $7,500 cheap car challenge thing, and Tom goes on Marketplace, finds this third-gen Camaro for $7,500, and I would be willing to bet you that in the 4 days that he ran that car, he's had more fun with it than he probably would have.
Guarantee it.
He is just having a barrel of laughs every time he goes. He's just having a blast. So that's what you got to remember. Drag racing. Yeah, okay. Like for us, we're never going to compete with anybody. Our car's kind of an oddball thing that it doesn't really fit in any class, but we don't care. All we care about is the number that's going to go on the board, and it kind of goes back to the roadkill. Set your goals or set your expectations low enough that you finally meet a goal. That's how I like to live. Pull it down. Let's meet a goal, and then we'll just keep building on it.
Well, and you got to build it for you. We just recently talked about this in another podcast, but you got to build it for you. And so you need to build it for you.
I'm very competitive though. That's the problem.
Yeah, but as long as you can get out there, you don't have to win every time. As long as you can somewhat compete, you're doing it for yourself. I just got to be faster than my buddies. That's my goal. As long as I'm faster than my buddies, I should be fine. So look back
on that a little bit, and it's going to be with the Southeast Gasser guys. Look up Adam Lowhorn. Him and his dad Mike. Their car's called the Rod Slinger, and it works in the BGS class. Have you seen this guy?
No, I don't think so.
I'm shocked you haven't, to be honest, because he's kind of a sensation because he's the show. I tell him all the time, I'm like, dude, you are the Southeast Gasser show. They have the car set up. It does these massive wheelies. He does the big smoky burnouts. He backs it up. He does a dry hop holding the door open. He puts it literally on the bumper and just out of sight every time. And he said, he goes, I'm racing against guys that are, fast. He said, I don't think I can beat them. So I'm just going to have fun in my way. And I'm going to do it for the crowd. And I'll tell you, there's no person there at one of those events that has more cell phones on him when he pulls into the beams. The stands are full of them because they're ready to see Rod Slinger do his thing. Exactly. He has a lot of fun with it. Him and his dad talk about it all the time. They'll pull in, they've got beat. And he said there's 30 people standing around the car going, whoa, like, what was that? That was awesome. Wanting to know his name, wanting an autograph or, whatever.
Yeah. I just know whenever I was a teenager, I had friends who them and their dads built race cars and raced. And, there was a guy that lived in my neighborhood. He had a 70, I think it was a 70 Monte Carlo, 71 maybe. And back then, so this was 25 years ago, but they were running on the 8th mile, they were running like high 6s, low 7s. And that was just,
that's slow now.
That was awesome. That was great.
Yeah, you can turbo an F-150. You can turbo a 2024 F-150 and run a 550 right now.
I mean that's fair, but you're right. You're 100% right. Back then, that's so fast. That's crazy. I mean, Dad talks about stuff like that, seeing guys at Greer and stuff. We were pretty lucky, like in our area, and I really wanted to dig into the history of it more. But like the Charlotte area, there was a racetrack in Shuffletown. It was down in Charlotte. It's called Shuffletown and stuff like that. It was kind of the birthplace of like Pro Mod, kind of. I'm sure there's some argument on that of where that is, but it was a hub of it, and it kind of grew out of there. And so, like, we've just been lucky to be in this area of these really fast cars for a lot of years. Charlotte, for whatever reason, is race city. That's why it's just there's a lot of innovation and stuff that comes out of there.
So with the Southeast Gassers, where do they race at?
I wish I had the schedule in front of me. The first race I know for a fact is March 21st and 22nd. It's going to be at South Georgia Motorsports Park down in Valdosta. So it's going to be their biggest venue. This place, I think Randy told me last night, it has 300 or 350 acres. They're going to have a 2-day swap meet while the event's going on. So that's the first one. And I honestly think with it being the first one, everyone's going to be ready to be at the track. It has the potential to be the biggest event they've ever done. They race also in Knoxville, Tennessee, here in Shadyside. It's in South Carolina. So it is kind of southeast, but I think they're going back up to Ohio this year. So that's probably the closest one to you guys, I would guess.
Okay. Did they do one in London, Kentucky last year?
They did. Yep. They did.
That'd be the closest one for us, probably.
It had they're not racing there this year. It had some weather issues and some different stuff that caused it not to happen. I'm not ignoring you. I am just pulling up the schedule super fast because I don't want to.
I was just curious because, I mean, some of our listeners might be interested in checking out an event.
And you can always follow Southeast Gassers on everything, and then you can also follow us. I share the schedule pretty regularly, but it looks like I said, Xenia, Ohio, they're going to be at Killcare. Killcare Dragway is the one there. They're racing Ringgold, Georgia, Jackson, Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, Gulfport, Mississippi, Shelby, North Carolina, Mooresville, some places like that. So it is really heavily based in the Southeast, but they're trying to expand a little more, at least to have a few of these events that's further west and a little further north, because honestly, their fan base is that big.
Yeah, well, Xenia is probably the closest one on that schedule to us to maybe try to check out. Maybe Knoxville would be the next one. So.
Yeah, if you can make it to Knoxville is a very great facility, and it's a lot of fun. That's probably one that I'll be at. It's one of those Knoxville races.
Yeah, you've got a couple of cars yourself. That one of them I'm really interested in, but I was looking and your C10's pretty sharp too. I'm good. Now I like square body Chevy trucks for sure.
Yep.
So, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your cars?
So I'll start with the square body because it's what I had first. It's an 86 C10. It has a very wore out 305 in it. Turbo 350. It's its own thing. I've had it I got it in October of 2018. So whatever that is, about 6 years now. So I got it then. It kind of set. Not said I drove it a little, but it had a lot of issues and stuff. It had an old junky Edelbrock carburetor on it and stuff when we first got it. We made a lot of Let me tell you a quick story about going to get that truck. So 2018, I would have just graduated about a year. I'd been out of school for about a year. And so I'm itching to get me a car or a truck, or especially a truck. I'm really looking for a square body truck. This one gets listed on Marketplace or wherever down in South Carolina and Bowling Springs. We go look at it. We're content with it. We strike a deal with the guy and we drive it home. On the way home, it has no rear view mirror. It has no glass in the side view mirror. It has no speedometer. I have no idea how fast this thing's going. I'm just riding. So the truck came with a front clip. So he's got his diesel truck with the front clip in the bed of it. He's leading me on. I'm following. About halfway home, the lower bolt on the shock comes off. And I go over a bridge joint and you just hear, just digs into the what's that noise? And I don't know, I'm just cruising, man. And so like we pull off, we figure out what's going on. And I told Dad, I was like, no one else would have been so happy to have picked this up and brought it home, but you couldn't have got the smile off my face when I got that truck. And it's a I've got a 350 to build to put in it. It's actually sitting right there off to the side of the camera. And I've got a Tremec 5-speed I'm going to put in that truck. So it's going to go away from the automatic. Everything's going to, I'm working really hard to make everything a straight drive. Got to really live up to that Shift Points name.
So are you just building it as a cruiser, or are you going to try to race it?
I think that truck will just kind of be a cruiser. My wife loves it. My son loves it. It's probably what I'm going to end up having to teach her how to drive a straight drive on, because she doesn't know right now. So I foresee my son getting that truck at some point in his future, if I had to guess, just based off his personality. So it'll probably just be a cruiser. That's basically it for it. Like I said, it's a great truck. There's no rust in it or anything like that, and that's why I kind of baby it, even though it's 15 different colors, and most of them I've spray painted it with literal spray paint. So
that's okay, man. That's all right.
That's something I'm really big about. I just paint and shine, and I don't care. Like and I don't mean it bad. Like, I love to see it. I love it when people love it. I love to see it and stuff like that. But for me, I just don't have any interest in it. I'd rather be reliable, let it be fun, let it be fast. I ain't worried about paint.
Well, your other car, the one that I really like, that's pretty shiny.
So let me tell you about that car. So that is a 1964 Galaxy. It is a 390 4-speed car from the factory, bench seat.
Nice.
It is it's a beautiful car. It flat out is. It was bought brand new here in my hometown of Marshall, North Carolina, by my great uncle about 15 years ago. He passed away, and he left it to me. So it sat there for 10 years because I was a kid. I mean, literally, I was a kid. 16 years ago, I'd have been 14, 15 years old. So I was literally a kid. So it just sat there in a garage, luckily in a relatively controlled environment. And then finally, I got just last year to the point where I could actually kind of do something with it. And we decided that would be our second big project for Shift Points. And so we pulled it out, got it started on the points, engine started up and everything. But man, this thing smokes like a freight train, right?
Yeah.
We did a lot of work to this car. We put disc brakes all the way around. I kind of redid the interior, but that car, the paint, the shine on that paint, that's 1964 Henry Ford, man. That car's never had a paint job on it. It's got a lot of interesting little chrome pieces and stuff that not all those cars had. Specifically, I had a guy on YouTube comments tell me, actually, there's a trim piece right down the center of the hood, and it's got like almost like a bullseye eye-shaped deal on the front of it.
Yep.
Something like this. That was apparently a dealer installed only option. That wasn't something that you got at the factory. And so the only thing we can figure is that my Uncle Richard, he worked at the Ford place in Marshall. So I'm assuming he probably had a little bit of an in down there. He was a bookkeeper for them. So I'm assuming he probably had a little bit of an in, and that's probably how that ended up on that car, was him working down there. So that car, it's set for 15 years. We got it fired back up, and right now it's in a lot of different pieces. The engine, we ended up pulling the engine apart. It was using a quart of oil every 100 miles. So it was a sipper. Or check the gas, add oil, kind of that situation. So it's apart right now. We're trying to decide what to do with it. It's going to get rebuilt. And I keep throwing out there to mess with people, putting an LS7 or something crazy in it. Oh, yeah. That car's a cruiser. It's so original. It needs to kind of stay that way. Like I stripped out the carpet and stuff when I redid the interior because it was so like moldy and kind of crusty. But like in general, everything about that car is original. So it's just going to be a cruiser too. Maybe with the 4-speed, it would be cool to put like a gear vendors or something in it just to have a little highway gear, but we'll see.
Well, whenever I saw some of your stuff go up about the LS and stuff, I was like, "Oh, come on, man! You got to leave the 390 in that thing."
Yeah, I have to poke the bear occasionally. I have to.
Yeah, I know. So I saw on one of your posts that you had some black steelies on it.
Mm-hmm. With that exact hubcap on it. Yes, I was going to point that out at some point. I saw it behind your head. That right there, that hubcap is how that build started.
Okay.
I could not figure out what like wheel tire combination I wanted on it or how I wanted it to kind of look. And I was just could not get it. And then one day I saw there was a white Galaxy I saw for sale online, and it had black wheels and it had that style hubcap. And so I started digging Marketplace. I found a set of them. I found a set of wheels from Wheel Antiques that would fit those caps, and got them powder coated. And then after that, it was like, all right, now we can start working. I know what the car needs to look like now. And so then we started working on it.
Well, I mean, I'm a big dog dish Steely guy. So
yeah, me too.
That hubcap right there, I actually got at a like an antique mall type place.
Oh, really?
So,
yeah.
Yeah. There's a guy that has some vintage hubcaps there sometimes. That's where that Ford truck hubcap right there came from too.
Gotcha.
Same place. He'll just have random hubcaps in there, and he'll sell them for like $2 or $3. So
yeah,
I'll usually buy them. they make good pieces to hang on the wall. But
exactly, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I love dog dishes. I'm a patina dog dish Steely guy, and that's what my F100 has on it. We had a Falcon for a while. That's what we had on it. And,
yeah, that was a good
I think so. I love on my C10. I love the truck rallies, and they'll probably stay for a long time. But I do have a set of dog dishes to put on it at some point. Change the wheels because I love that look so much.
Yeah, they look really good with a nice set of wide tires. And when I'm picturing your Galaxy with those, I'm thinking a really nice set of wide tires with those wheels and hubcaps will just look sweet. So.
Yeah. We got it's got an 8-inch wheel on the back of it, so it's substantially wider than it was.
Oh yeah.
I'm completely blanking on the tire size off the top of my head, but we put a little bit more meat on the back of it to kind of add to that. Because those cars, I mean, they had 14-inch wheels on them, and they were really narrow, and they're so big. And then you set them on this little, they just look like they got chicken legs, So we had to add a little meat to them.
So we've talked about gassers and we've talked about drag racing, but I also know you're a big NASCAR and short track circle racing fan too.
Yeah. To my detriment, I love all types of racing. I just can't get enough of it. Cars going fast, and especially if I can have a job with it, I just love it. And so I still watch every NASCAR race, man. I mean, I know there's a lot of diehards out there that's like, NASCAR died with Dale and stuff like that. And hey, I mean, I understand your point of view completely. It's very different than it used to be, but I can't not watch it. I don't know. It's just something about it. I'm just hooked with it. And you can see this car back here up there in that top picture. So that's Eugene Norton is the guy that I work with. He runs the 27. It's a limited late model car. I am his spotter. So again, you guys haven't noticed, I talk a lot. So I guess he decided that he wanted to hear me talk in his ear for 75 laps at a time. So I've been doing that for a couple seasons now. It's a ton of fun. I love being up on the spotter stand. I love just being, I tell my wife, she doesn't understand it. So she never grew up around cars or anything like that. And she doesn't really get it as far as all this goes. And I told her, I said, I understand what you're saying. The only way for me to explain it is that other than being with you and Riley, her and Riley, other than that, there's no time that I'm happier than when I walk into a racetrack. Any of them. I get excited. I just want to see a good race, no matter what it is. If we're there, of course, I want us to win, but at the same time, I just want to show up, see fast cars doing cool things, and mainly seeing people doing cool things with fast cars, So like I grew up kind of watching drag racing and stuff. Dad was a big Dale Earnhardt fan, but because he always says that if Dale Earnhardt had driven Fords, he would have never rooted for him. It wasn't him. He loved Chevrolets, and Dale Jr. and Dale was Chevrolet, period, And so I grew up watching that up to that point, and then he kind of faded away with it after that as well. But there's just such innovators like Smokey Yunick I've got back here on the wall as well. Smokey Yunick, I don't know if you guys know a lot about him, but he's kind of the outlaw crew chief of NASCAR. I mean, if there was a rule to exploit, he was looking for it. for an example, a very quick story about him. At one point, he built the fuel line in his car because there was no rule in NASCAR that said how long your fuel line had to be. So he actually run the fuel line and routed it under the seat, and he would snake the fuel line under the seat so that he could get a lot more volume of fuel in his fuel system. So when NASCAR finally finds out about it, they go and they drain the tank, and then they plug the tank back up, and he crawls in the car, turns the key, and the car lights back up. And he had a shop in Daytona, and so he drove the car from Daytona Speedway back to his shop. And when they asked him about it, they said, is it true that happened? He said, oh, yeah. He said, I drove it back to the shop. He said, but I could have drove it all the way to Jacksonville if I wanted to. So, like, that was just the kind of guy he was. And so there's so many fun, interesting people and stories that come out of circle track racing that, man, if you don't study it and look into it a little bit, you're just missing out on a really interesting side of the automotive world.
Yeah, I don't know if you listened to Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast or not.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you see the episode with Darrell Waltrip on it?
Yeah, it's been a long time ago, so you'll have to remind me of some of it.
Okay, so Darrell Waltrip is telling all kinds of old secrets and things that they used to do to cheat,
Mm-hmm.
And it's hilarious listening to him talk because he's a hoot anyway. But he's telling a story about them. In order to meet specs, they would fill the frame rails of the car with
lead shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he would dump it.
Yep.
Right as the races started. He had a lever like he pulled to open this little trap door to dump it.
See, that was the crazy thing about NASCAR back then is all the tech process happened pre-race, and there was no tech process after the race. Who thought this was a good idea? I'll never understand. Like he said, he had lead shot that was built into the frame rail. He had like a little trap door kind of thing he would pull, and he said everyone was doing it. He said you would go out on the track and you would just be getting pelted with lead shot because everybody was just pulling lead out of the car.
And then one of the track owners stopped him one day and asked him, where is all this BBs coming from? Because there was BBs all down in the grass, next to the track as they were having to clean up.
That's
insane.
There's so many fun stories like that with NASCAR racing, especially back then. It's so engineered at this point. It's a little more difficult. But the innovations, those cars right now, even though they're kind of spec cars, there's innovation in them. You might not see it, you might not know, but everybody's pushing every little thing that they can.
They're trying to find every gray area to try to weasel something.
They're looking, if you're building an engine, they're looking for 1-2 horsepower. If they're if they're looking for time on the track, they're looking for thousands. They're not looking for tenths anymore. You're looking for thousands of a second.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I stopped watching NASCAR probably, I don't know, maybe 13 years ago. I was probably about 10 years old when I stopped watching NASCAR. But it was because, I don't know, I grew up watching NASCAR. So it that was all I knew. And then I discovered other forms of racing and I kind of fell away from it. But when I was younger, I tell you this all the time. And I bring this up all the time because it's one of my fondest memories. But I used to play a game on PlayStation 1, and it was called NASCAR Thunder 2003.
Yep.
And man, every time, I think peak NASCAR, I think of early mid 2000s. You've got Dale in the number 8 car, and I don't know, and then you get on that game, and you got Steppenwolf playing.
Yeah.
Magic Carpet Ride. I'm like, man, that is like some of the best automotive racing that the world has to offer, like right there back in that time period.
Well, for me, I feel like the 90s was the best.
I wasn't
time
around for that, so
that's when it really blew up. That's when you had Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon. I mean, Jimmy Johnson was coming along, and you still had Darrell Waltrip ending his career. In the early, I guess, right at the end of the 80s, early 90s there, and so you still had, Dale Jarrett, and you could name so many guys who, during that time period, it was still like the old racing, but with some modern technology.
Exactly.
I wish I could have been born just a little bit earlier because I didn't get to experience that. Actually, Dale Sr. died like a couple months before I was even born.
Yeah.
So it's like I never got to watch him race ever. But I was a huge Dale Jr. fan growing up.
Yeah.
Huge.
Of course. Yeah.
Because I mean he was a Dale fan. So Dale Sr. So it was like, Dale Jr. started racing and I was like, this is the guy I'm following right here.
When I first started watching NASCAR, I mean everybody was Dale Earnhardt fans, right?
Yeah.
And Jeff Gordon came along. And
that was your guy right there.
I jumped on and started following Jeff Gordon, and then Jeff Gordon started winning championships. I mean, over and over and over, and it's like, okay, so I'm following the right guy here. But then you still couldn't help though to be somewhat of a Dale Earnhardt fan.
How could you not? I feel like just from the clips and stuff I've seen and things I've heard, him say and stuff, because obviously social media is a thing. So he's like, everybody idolizes Dale Sr.
Yeah.
So like I've seen a ton of his stuff and like just seeing it, how could you not be a fan of this guy? Like he was awesome.
Yeah. Well, for me, I stopped watching NASCAR right after the point change. So I didn't like the new point system. I tried to watch it for another year or so.
That's probably a little bit after I stopped.
And then I quit watching it at the new point system. I guess I was just stuck in the old way.
To be fair, if I had my pick, it would be a full year championship and it would be accumulation of points. And whoever had the most won the championship, period.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So that's where it kind of lost me. But then the next gen car, I started watching a little bit with it, and I was just like, man, I just can't do it. So
now aren't all the cars running
away from it?
Aren't all the cars running like the same motors and stuff now?
Pretty much same motor, same body.
Yeah,
it's very similar chassis and bodies. There's still some differences in motors, Toyota versus Chevy versus Ford. So
But I didn't think that there was. I thought that they were basically all running the same block.
They potentially are. So I don't know that answer, to be honest. I should know it, but I don't know. So I don't know how they're working that exactly. But I do know that there's different developments for Toyota, Chevrolet.
Oh, I guess to me the manufacturers don't mean as much as they used to.
No, they don't. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And that's another thing that bothers me, because it was always a manufacturer's war, every year.
On Sunday, sell on Monday.
Yeah.
I mean, that was for years.
Yeah. And so if anybody listening to this doesn't watch the Dale Earnhardt Jr. podcast, you really ought to go check it out.
You should.
So I have no reason to tell you that, except for he has some cool guests on there, and the Darrell Waltrip interview is an old interview, but it is great. That interview is great.
It's hard to beat his because he touches modern stuff, but he also digs way back into some of these older crew chiefs and guys that you don't even know. But man, this guy built a car that you love, you know what I mean? But you didn't realize he was the crew chief. And that's what I appreciate about him, really opening eyes to a lot of history of the sport.
Well, and he talks about in that too, how his first car was a Mercury, and he was married into a very wealthy family. And he said, everybody thought that I just had everything given to me. He said, he didn't give me nothing. My father-in-law didn't give me anything. He said, I had to build that car myself. And he said, it took every dime we had every week we went to go race it. And my wife would ask me, how are we going to make it to the next race? And so he said, we started winning, and we started, being able to get better and better. But he said, when we first started, we had nothing. We bought that car, and it took every dime we had.
And honestly, that's one of the biggest differences between now versus then. Back then, those guys raced because they loved it, yes. But if they didn't win, they probably didn't eat as much as they normally would that week.
That's right.
So there was a drive, this like absolute bitter determination to win and build your stuff better and figure out how to win. Where nowadays it's very different. It's very, like I said, it's very engineered. Your drivers are almost all of them are multimillionaires. It's just very different,
I think that's with all sports, honestly, not even just automotive. It's gotten to the point where it's not about winning for like bragging rights anymore. It's not about doing the best you can with what you got. It's like, it's like all these people in all sports are like millionaires at this point. So it's just, let me go out there, get a paycheck, and go back home.
Well, to me, that's where the grassroots racing is, to me, the most fun to watch and to keep up with.
It is.
And which is what you're involved with, and to me, that's where I see all the fun at being.
It is a lot of fun, but there's a lot of money and stuff like that even involved all the way down to that level now. And honestly, I put up a video. I don't know if you guys saw it or not. We were racing down at Dillon, and I'm going to talk about Bert here again real quick because it was a very big eye-opening thing for me. We were down there at Dillon running a race back in January or earlier this month, and we were there, and I'm on the spotter stand. And when you're on a spotter stand, racing against faster cars is actually a little easier, or racing against similar speed cars is easier to spot than if you're spotting against someone that's like very much slower than you. Yeah. So because you're trying to watch the guys that you're racing around, but okay, hey, we've got a lap car coming up here too. So there was a point during this race a few different times where we're 3 wide to a car that is much slower than us on the inside of the track. And I'm like, man. So I'm getting a little frustrated not knowing. And then after the race, this guy comes into our trailer and he is just elated. He's so happy to be there. He finished like 15 laps down. He tells us how much he appreciated it. It's a 75 lap race, 15 laps down. He said, man, I just appreciate you guys so much. We've had so much fun racing with y'all. I'm just glad I had the opportunity to be out there. And guy is kind of like stereotypical kind of redneck guy, a little older guy. But his name was Bert Ramsey, and Bert was just, and like, I'm sitting here listening, and then I hear him say this, and I think about it, and then we go to eat after the race, and my driver goes, did you see Bert come by? The guy in the 41 car? And I said, was that who come in and spoke to us? He said, yeah, probably. He said, he works 3 jobs so that he can come in and race that car. And I said, and he works 3 jobs. he slept on an open trailer with a makeshift tent with a buddy heater for 2 nights there, or 2, maybe 3 nights. It was well into the 20s or lower every night we were there. But just because he wanted to race, period.
Yeah,
he didn't going to stop him. And dude, you talk about just like a gut punch. When Eugene said that and I started thinking about it, and I've got a 5-hour drive home, I'm sitting here just like contemplating all this, thinking about it, like, holy crap, like we're down here we could have showed up with a stacker trailer. Literally, the guys we race with, they have a stacker trailer that they can bring 2 or 3 cars with them to the racetrack. And we've got any tool that we need, for the most part. We can do whatever we need. Oh, we need to make a spring change. Go grab a spring. We've got springs to grab from. This guy don't have anything extra. He was basically there with him and one other guy just using what they've got. And he was happier than almost everybody that was racing there that weekend. And I told Eugene, I told Dad, I said, we're doing something wrong. If we finish 7th and we come in kicking our feet and mad, we're stupid, because we had a really great weekend. And like I said, we had a lot of fun hanging out with friends. And at the end of the day, racing is supposed to be fun, because there ain't nobody down there making any money. None of them. Yeah. You might as well have fun. So that's my 2025. Bert's inspired me. When I go somewhere, I'm going to be having some fun this year.
That's an awesome story.
That goes back to what you were talking about with the Cletus's budget car challenge. It seems like the guys that have the least amount invested into what they're doing have the most fun, because it's just like they get to get out there and do it. Exactly. And with that $7,500 car challenge, those guys are running like, but it's insane. They're running like 9s and 10s, but still, that's slow in this day and age.
They have access to a lot of stuff that others don't too. But
yes, they do. They do. I agree with that. But it's like they have said multiple times in their videos, this is the most fun they've had on a sick week or a drag and drive in general, because they're not stressing about their $100,000 race car and every little thing that could possibly go wrong. I mean, they're JB welding sensors into their turbo piping. It's like, I mean, it works. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Well, do you think part of it too is the more you make, the more you have to make sure your sponsors are taken care of too?
It's huge. That's a massive part of it in racing. And like I said, there's plenty of sponsorship opportunities down on our level too. Like these guys, I mean, even our guy, he's got some construction companies and stuff like that kind of help us along or help him along. And so like there are certain obligations that you're going to have to be. Now you think about like in NASCAR, it's not a construction company, they've got Walt on the side of the car or whoever, name a major brand. They're probably on the side of the car. You can't get out running your mouth and you can't run down to the pits and start fighting everybody. You start everybody, even me sometimes, right? You're like, wreck them. And, you got to go down there and fight that guy.
Yeah.
Do that. There's 10, 20, $30 million or more on the line and you can't make those guys mad. So like, that's where a big part of the mindset, it is a big shift.
Well, even like the guy that you were saying that works 3 jobs. Well, he's working 3 jobs because he don't have those sponsorship dollars.
Yep. Exactly.
So he's not got that stress of making sure that his sponsor is happy. And the guy running the $7,500 car at Sick Week, he doesn't have that stress because the guys that are running the top runs, they do have sponsors. Yep. And those sponsors are wanting them to do well. They've got to make sure they do well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Plus they've got these really expensive cars on top of that. And it's like, if that car is not in peak condition at all times, which it's a race car, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's got to be in peak condition at all times to please these sponsors as well. It's a lot of work and stress. And I feel like when you're at a lower level, it's like, you go out to your event, you blow your motor up. It's like, all you're disappointing is yourself. Nobody else. You don't have to worry about sponsors or anything. It's just like, got to build a new motor. Let me go back home.
Yeah. So, but it's like that in your job too. The higher you get in a company, the more stress there is, the more you have to deal with
everything. It's with everything.
Yeah, it is. But I think when it comes to a hobby, now, some of those guys, it's their livelihood.
Yeah.
But for us, it is a hobby.
Yeah.
So keep it fun. Keep it fun.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Because then you're not going to like it anymore if it's not.
When it becomes a job more than a hobby.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
When it becomes a job, you need to take a step back for sure.
Yeah.
Unless you're getting paid for it, you need to take a step back.
So, Jacob, you've got a YouTube channel, and you and your dad started that YouTube channel building 55 Chevy truck.
Yep, it's a first series. So internet, if you see pictures of it, it is a 55 Chevrolet truck. I promise. It's just a first series 55 Chevrolet truck. There was a body style change in the mid year of 55, and then it went from this truck that looks a lot more like a 54 to the very iconic 55 Chevrolet trucks that you see often. And so we started that. That truck is it's. Again, it kind of goes back to where we are. There's parts of it that the paint on the truck was junk when we got it. So that truck started out as a customer truck. So Dad was working here in the shop, and he got in a little further into it than he really wanted to be. So Dad kind of bought him out, and so that's how it ended up with us. And it's set for about 8 years, just sitting here in the shop, kind of as we were doing other stuff, because we just, because we were still working, trying to make money, and so that truck has an LS. It's out of a 2009 Chevy Silverado. It's got all those stuff. So LS out of it, got the 4L60 out of that same truck. 4 9-inch in the back. The best thing that Ford ever made, I guess, probably that rear end.
Probably. I will agree with that, even though that was a knock. I will agree with that. That the 306 cylinder, that was the two best things they've ever made.
Yeah, that's fair. And Mustang 2 style front suspension under it. It's a Heights front suspension. Dad kind of specializes in those a little bit. He's put in quite a few of those into different trucks and cars and stuff over the years. So it's just, again, kind of a cruiser. It's my buddy Chris Wozniak over at WAF Racing. You guys probably have seen us do some videos for them. They do some 3D printed tools that you use to work on carburetors and stuff. They make various different things, but they kind of specialize in carburetor tools, I would say. And so he put out this challenge to me and to Colin at the Daily Misfire over in Irwin to maybe let's all meet together and do some drag racing. And so the only thing that we had that could remotely do it was Dad's truck at that time. So we put a posi in it. It's got we put slapper bars on it, a few different things like that. So we still haven't got to do that. So I'm going to blame Chris for that. He never made the call. He never told us where we were going. But anyway, so that truck's ready. I think, so I've never actually got to go down the drag strip, even though I love racing so much. I've never been on a racetrack ever, and so that's something I'm going to fix this year in some way, shape, or form. And that truck will probably be it if I had to guess. So I'm gonna take it to somewhere, a local track or something, make some passes. I just want some seat time. I want to kind of understand the whole process. While I've watched hundreds and thousands of drag races and videos about drag racing, it's going to be completely different when you actually strap in and you're on the line. So it's a completely different feel. I know that. I need to get that under my belt so that I know what that feeling is and start to understand it so that we can make some preparations for when the 55 is ready to go.
All I'm going to say is you're going to feel like you're going way faster than you really are.
Yep.
I expect.
I've done a couple runs on a drag strip, and then I've done a lot of street stuff in Mexico. So,
yeah, of course.
So, you always feel like you're going way faster. I will say the fastest I've went at a quarter mile, I clocked 100 mile an hour. And I felt like I was going 150, man. I felt like I was going.
Playing speed record there.
Man, it was a 13-second quarter mile at 100 mile an hour. I was like, man, it's got to be fast. You don't see the board as you fly past it. So it's like, oh, it's got to be fast now. 13 seconds.
So I ran the first time down a drag strip last summer during
Power Tour.
Yeah.
In the same car, actually.
Yeah, in the same car.
Nice. Okay, cool.
So I don't ever do that kind of thing. And I just like, you know what? I had my youngest son with me. I said, we're going to run this car down the drag strip today. So we autocrossed in Bristol the year before.
Nice.
So last year,
you guys were on Power Tour that year. You guys were on Power Tour 2023.
Yes. So we went to Concord. We went to Concord, Charlotte, and Bristol. So
gotcha.
We just did the last 3 stops.
So we were stomping right together. Didn't even know it.
Yeah, didn't know it. Yeah, we were watching autocross and loved it. So we ran the autocross.
Same car, by the way. The same car that's drag raced it's a 96 Cobra.
Yeah.
We use it for everything.
Yeah. So then last year I was like, hey, let's run it down the track. So we ran 2 passes, and then
poor guy, I'm gonna have to teach you how to race a car, buddy.
Well, it was again, like he said, I thought I was going really fast. And then I see the time. Now I will say this. The first time down the track, I blew the doors off a 69 Charger. And I thought this thing was going to be a monster because the dude pulls up there. He's got his helmet on. And he's all strapped in with racing harnesses and everything. And
it's probably really loud, wasn't it?
It was loud. I took him off the line, and he never caught me. I mean, never caught up to me.
Look, you can make a 4-cylinder loud.
Yeah,
it'll matter how loud it is. It could be a dog.
Well, I ran it twice, and then they wouldn't let me run no more. So,
do you remember how fast you
I didn't go through test and tune. I was supposed to.
Tech line?
Tech, yeah. I didn't. Tech. I didn't even know I was supposed to. I just pulled up in line and went down the track.
Yeah. So that car's fun. That car's a good time. You will definitely love going down the track. Like, I mean, making test hits and stuff on the street. That's one thing. But on a prep track or even on an unprep track, it's completely different.
Yeah,
I mean it's a lot of fun. You feel like you're flying past the bleachers on each side. Realistically, you're really not going anywhere.
What makes
it's a good time though.
Even though that car is slow, what makes that car so much fun, and we're just out there to have fun, is the transmission that's in it. So we got to handle the motorsports.
TR3650.
Yeah, TR3650.
Out of a 04 Mustang. That I blew the transmission up in that car when I owned it. Actually, the time I was racing, I had a T45 in it, and I blew that transmission up racing, and that was my daily driver. So on my way home I was actually at Import Alliance at Beach Bend. But yeah, I raced a bunch of stuff there, like a Lightning, and I had a buddy with a Fiesta ST. I raced him, and then a Turbo Civic. and I beat them all. You know, that car wasn't very fast, but them imports aren't very fast either. So, but anyway, I was driving home, and as I was going home, this guy that asked me to race there was like, "Hey," you know, or he was going the same direction I was, so we were pulling up next to each other on the interstate. So I was like, "I'm gonna downshift and race him here." My car was getting hot; I didn't want to race him at the track, so I went to go downshift, and it did not come out of fifth gear. It stayed. So that's why we got the 3650, and that's why that car is so fun, is because it's got a TR 3650. It's rated for like 600 horsepower, and it's got 410s in the rear, and that thing, it sits there and spins them through second. But when it hooks, and when you're shifting, man, it will shift hard, and it hooks good when it does.